Welcome to another episode of Two Bald Guys. My name is Eric Giordano, and I am the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, also known as WIPS.
And I'm Dave Anderson, a Senior Policy Fellow here at WIPS. By the way, for those of you who may not be familiar with WIPS, we're a unit of the University of Wisconsin system founded in 2007 with a mission to educate and engage citizens, develop future leaders, and bring the resources of the university to address community identified needs. Today, we're going to be featuring a representative from an organization called Welcoming Ymca, who will be talking with us about Welcoming Week here in the United States.
Speaking of welcoming, Dave, we'd like to welcome our two loyal viewers, one of whom is our paid producer, Luke Rudolph. And Luke, I wonder if you might join us for a minute. I've been reading in the news a lot about the opening of many colleges and universities around the country and how that's being disrupted by COVID. Shockingly, it seems that many young people are mixing and mingling in ways that allows the virus to spread. And so, for example, here in Wisconsin, we also have an intern who's from UW-Madison, and she was describing the situation at UW-Madison. And of course, they've moved completely online, at least for the next couple of weeks. And there's this huge outbreak in Dane County, which is really, kind of focused on the UW-Madison campus. So we were kind of curious, Luke, you were a student at UW-Stevens Point. How are things going for you and fellow students at Stevens Point?
Well, we're still doing in-person classes, but we have all of their students in my classes have been taking bets for when we will have to move virtually, but we're all trying to stay optimistic, and it's going okay so far. So knock on wood, we can all stay healthy.
Do you have some face-to-face classes?
Yep, all of my classes but one are face-to-face.
Okay.
Well, Luke, we wish you and your fellow students a safe and productive school year. And I really, since you're on camera, I have to say, and in case we haven't made it clear, we really, really appreciate all you do to make this show possible, and all you've done to make this show the success that it's been. Despite your overabundance of hair, you really have earned a spot as an honorary bald guy. And depending upon how long we do this show, as you start losing some of that hair, we feel that's our way of grooming you to take one of our roles at some point in the future. So I just had to get that in there.
Nice one. Yeah, we still got to get that rim shot, Luke. But anyway, I really have to agree with Dave, Luke. I mean, you've been fantastic. We really appreciate all your work. And when the clips are down, you always step up, and we appreciate you.
Well, it's my pleasure to help out with the show and to learn from such smart and bald gentlemen like you. And Dave, you always talk about your trips going down to Madison to see your barber, and I have to ask you, what do you call a group of men waiting for a haircut?
I don't know. What do you call a group of men waiting for a haircut?
A barbecue.
A barbecue. Oh my God! Did you just break out a bald pun? I can't believe it. Well, all I can say is I'm glad to see our razor sharp humor is rubbing off on you a little bit. It's kind of like the hair on Eric's head, kind of rubbing off.
Yeah, thanks. Are you two quite finished? Dave, speaking of which, if our viewers have a hair joke or pun for us or any comment about the show or show ideas, they can email us at info@wips.org. That's info@WIPPS.org. And during the live show, viewers can make comments or pose questions to our guests via the Facebook chat section. I guess we're ready to get to our guest.
Yeah, she popped on the screen, and I'm very pleased to introduce Molly Hilligoss, who's the Midwest Regional Manager for Welcoming Ymca. Eric and I had the pleasure of getting to know Molly when we were putting together the first inclusivity conference. Was that just last year? I guess it was just last year. It seems like it was a lot longer ago than that. But it's really been a pleasure getting to know Molly and learning about our organization. Molly, I have to thank you. Molly sent me a welcoming hat. I was reluctant to put it on until just now because I didn't want it to mess my hair. But I really do appreciate the hat. And I'm going to, in honor of you and your organization, I'm going to wear it for the rest of the show today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, we're just trying to share our welcoming love and keep your head warm as we move into these colder days here in Wisconsin. So,
Well, thank you very much. And why don't you begin by talking a little bit about what Welcoming America, the organization, is all about,
sure.
And how you got involved.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so again, my name is Molly Hilligoss, and I am the Midwestern Regional Manager for a national organization called Welcoming America. Welcoming America's, big idea is really that when we give folks in community the opportunity to come together, build bridges across their differences, and really think about smart local policies, programs, and partnerships that create spaces where everyone, including immigrants and refugees, can thrive, then we're really looking at a prosperous future for our country. So that's kind of the mission and goal. We are a network of about 180 communities and nonprofits across the country who are doing that work.
Are there certain parts of the country where there's a greater number of communities that have become part of the network, or are you seeing any regional?
Thank you for asking me that question, because it gives me the opportunity to tell you about how much more work I do than my colleagues. I just said we have about 180 members, and I believe there are about 90 in the Midwest, in the 11 state region that is under my sort of jurisdiction. We are currently looking to broaden and reach more folks in the West and in the South. But I think one of the things that's resonated about the welcoming message, especially in the Midwest, is that our medium and small communities in the Rust Belt have really gone through a series of economic and demographic changes over the past 30 years. And so for local leaders who are thinking about what that means for their communities, having a roadmap and an on-ramp to think about policies and programs has been really helpful for them.
Cool.
Thanks. So Molly, one of the reasons we were doing this show is because we're in or about to start, and that's why I want your feedback on something called Welcoming Week. And I believe that was your organization, correct, that started this idea. And so we'd like to hear more about what is Welcoming Week, and what is it all about, and how would one participate?
Sure, thank you. So Welcoming Week started with Welcoming America about 10 years ago, and has really sort of taken off through our network, and as well as through some partnerships with other national organizations over the last 3 to 4 years. We've really been able to bump that up. And one of the things that we think about Welcoming Week, especially in this time of pandemic, of divisions in our communities, of all of these times, is really a time for communities to celebrate the great work of inclusion and togetherness and do it together spirit, as well as uplift the stories of both newcomers and long-term residents in their communities, and build those connections. Last year was our biggest Welcoming Week kind of ever at Welcoming America. And I think there were around 3,000 events nationally. This year, things look a little different, obviously. and so we still have lots and lots of events. I think it'll probably be close to the same number. But most of those are happening. They're happening virtually. They're happening in smaller spaces, or conversations, or welcoming proclamations and resolutions happening in city councils. So there's not, large cultural festivals happening, or large celebratory events with dancing and music and all those fun pieces. But I think our network has really been able to innovate and think creatively about the ways in which we can still celebrate and bring people together, which frankly I think is something that we all really need right now, and can all really look forward to. A couple of examples. Yeah, do you want?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say a couple of examples of things I think that are happening that are really innovative and cool. Is in Cleveland, Ohio, for instance, they have looked at who are the demographics of folks in our communities, and where have they come from. And every day of the week they are hoisting up a flag of another nation, whether that be Germany or Senegal or Mexico, and then they are raising that flag up above City Hall, and then they are coupling that with a cooking demonstration from that country. So you can log onto your Zoom, and they have found a chef who's going to prepare a meal, and you can join in with your own ingredients or just watch along. But it's a great way to say, and here we are celebrating these different cultures that call our community home, even though we can't come together and all go out to eat at the German restaurant or Mexican restaurant or West African restaurant today. So.
I'm working on my family tree, and I've gotten kind of passionate about it. Sometimes I wish I had more time to devote to it, but it just constantly reminds me that we really are a nation of immigrants. And when you look back at all of our cultural backgrounds, I mean, they're rooted in other parts of the world, and it's just really an ongoing process. Hey, bringing things a little bit closer to home. I understand the Milwaukee YMCA has some events planned for Welcome Week. Originally, we were going to have a couple of representatives on the show, but I think they had a conflict that prevented them from being here. But I know you've been working with them. Maybe talk a little bit about what they're doing down in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I have been really excited to work with the folks at the Milwaukee YMCA. And I will just say also, the YMCA of the USA has been a national partner of Welcoming America's for Welcoming Week for the past 3 years. And so they have really embraced Welcoming Week too in their Y movement. And so it's been really, really cool to be able to see that from a bunch of different levels. The folks in Milwaukee are working on a couple of events that I think that really, really speak to the nature of our current times and the ways in which we can support all of our communities and the folks that utilize the Y. One of the partnerships that they've been working on is with the Goodwill, and the Goodwill there employs a lot of immigrant and refugee folks, and so they are putting together a partnership conversation to talk really about how these two organizations in the greater Milwaukee area who serve different populations in different places can really come together and create spaces where everyone can utilize the Y. Folks have the opportunity to learn about cultures and countries of origin at work within the Goodwill industries, but also we're talking about how we connect our communities in this time. And so the way that they are bringing this full circle is by hosting a community roundtable virtually, where the Y and Goodwill are going to have an event on Monday where they are coming together to talk about their own partnership and how that partnership is helping them serve long-standing folks in their community, new folks in their community, and how that can be a model for a broader partnership nationally that the YMCA and Goodwill are trying to forge together around a very large campaign called the National Inclusion Campaign. And so I think one of the things that's really cool there is that you have national organizations that are thinking about ways in which they can partner on inclusion in their communities, and then local organizations that are also mirroring that back up and also mapping that out. One of the other couple of things that they're doing, they are starting a series of Zoom conversations for folks in the Milwaukee area to talk about the differing and similar experiences of the Asian community in Milwaukee and the Black community, and how they can work together to think about confronting many of the racial discrepancies that we face in our state, as well as sharing each other's stories of immigration and of migration and of forced migration, and how coming together around those pieces of understanding can really build solidarity and build understanding, especially in our youth populations. And then finally, it would not be Welcoming Week if we weren't doing some kind of cleanup project or art project, right? And so the folks at the Y are working with a very small nonprofit called Neighborhood House in Milwaukee, and they do English language learning classes and support for refugee and immigrant families. And so volunteers from the Y and some of their other partners are going to be doing some signage work and some cleanup and those kinds of things in their community to in a socially distanced way be able to still get together and do some good manual labor, right? Good
Sounds like
for us
there's
all.
a lot going on.
Yeah, actually, it's very heartening to hear that even in the pandemic, we're finding ways to, celebrate Welcoming Week in tangible ways. So that's great news. I want to turn a little bit to a different type of question. I think it's fair to say that the last 4 years really has brought immigration issues into the public sphere, and not necessarily in positive ways, in the sense that there's a lot of divisiveness that we're seeing around this issue. And yet, research shows that a lot of Americans really want to, resolve and fix and improve, our immigration processes, both legal and illegal. And this is kind of leading up to a big sort of hairy question, which is, from your perspective, I mean, do you feel like we are a welcoming society? I mean, how are we doing? Are we on the upswing of welcomeness? Are we on the downswing? Where are we?
Well, I think I'm gonna go with some of our great leaders here on the arc of justice swings toward equity, right? I think that we have ebbs and flows in our country, but that ultimately we are becoming more inclusive, more welcoming, and more embracing of difference. And I think we see that playing out a little bit differently in different places. We know that things are there is a negative narrative on the federal level, and that the federal landscape especially around immigration policy has been really divisive. But conversely, we see a movement of communities and municipalities and nonprofits all over the country who are thinking about the ways in which all of their residents can participate economically, socially, and civically. And I think that is still a really important piece of what it means to be a democracy, really, and to strengthen those pieces. And so, I think that we are working at it, but we got a ways to go, right? I mean, every nonprofit's goal is to put themselves out of business eventually, right? Like that's the piece. But I think when we talk about issues of equity and issues of welcoming and issues of inclusion, like we do have a long way to go, and there are a lot of conversations that still need to be had, and there's also like a great hope in the fact that there are so many folks in our communities that are working on issues of broader inclusion and equity and welcoming.
I know Welcoming America has kind of a broad focus on immigration, just generally, and immigrants generally. But I know you do some really targeted programming with regard to the issues involving refugees coming to our country. Is that a special focus? I mean, does the organization spend a lot of time on refugee-related issues, or is it more of a general focus on immigrants across the board?
Mm-hmm. For a number of years, Welcoming America was actually part of the National Training and Technical Assistance Program for refugee serving organizations through the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So we actually had a large grant from the federal government to support specifically refugee serving organizations with a myriad of different topics. And so we have a lot of tools and toolkits and those kinds of pieces. I think one of the things that's happened over the past few years is that the ceiling for refugee resettlement has been continuously dropping, and refugee resettlement organizations, Welcoming America, all the folks that do this kind of work have really started to think about newcomers not only as folks who are very recently coming to our communities from refugee camps or through the refugee program, but all newcomers to our communities, right? And also, longstanding residents are not only old white folks, but they are also, African American communities and Latinx communities and folks who have been in community for a really long time. And so, while I think while lots of our toolkits do focus specifically on some of the issues that refugees specifically face in coming to a new place, our broad focus is immigrants in total.
Cool. Yeah, as I've learned more about your organization over the last couple of years, in particular, I've really come to appreciate, and I'm really intrigued by this program you guys do called your Welcoming Community Certification Program. Could you talk a little bit about that and what's involved with that, and why is being a certified welcoming community important?
Sure. So the Certified Welcoming Program was started just a couple of years ago, actually. And one of the things that, when you're talking about welcoming, it's very easy for folks to say, well, of course we're welcoming, right? But really, like, what does it mean to operationalize welcoming and give a commitment that that has some program policy and partnership and implementation teeth or backing. And so through the creation of the Certified Welcoming Program, one of the key pieces there is adherence to the welcoming standard. And so we're going to get a little technical for a minute, you guys. But so the welcoming standard has 7 framework areas, and they're very broad. I won't go through all of them, but they range from civic engagement to health access, right? And it's 7 areas of which, if your community or municipality or coalition of folks is working on immigrant integration and equity in these 7 areas, then you're operationalizing welcoming, right? Like you're well on your way to doing that. And within those frameworks, there are these very specific indicators, right? Like, for instance, one of them that is kind of on the municipal level is you have a unit of government that has somewhere in their job description that they support newcomers in your community. So, some larger cities have offices of equity, for instance, and within that scope, they have someone who's focused with part of their job would be to ensure language access, or to make sure that there's a resource referral for folks who are new to the country and new to the community. And so communities can really look at that as kind of a checklist that they can work their way through if they're really thinking about what some of this means. And then communities that are really ready to take that to sort of the next level can think about going through a formal auditing process, where Welcoming America has a couple of auditors, external, and they come out and they do sort of a full well, virtually at the moment, obviously. Um, they do a full kind of audit of all of these 7 indicators, and they provide the community a report on sort of where they're at and like what are some steps they need to do to work through that. And if they meet 95% of the criteria, then they can get this certification. And this is a welcoming certification. And it's much kind of like an organic certification or a LEED certification, and it was developed with some folks who do sort of international certifications, and as well as some of our members who really said, these are the things that we really think it means to do this operationally. We have about 15 or so communities right now that are either certified or kind of like or working through that process. So it's a pretty new program, but we see it as a real way for communities to distinguish themselves in this space, and to say, what, it's much more than declaring welcoming week or declaring ourselves welcoming. It is saying that we've committed on a program, partnership, and policy basis to working on equity. So it's exciting to see that.
Oh, that's great. And so how would an individual or an organization, a nonprofit, like you said, you have partners, or a community, like a municipality or village or town, or a coalition, how would they get in touch with Welcome America and get connected, I guess, into these programs?
Yeah, so Welcoming America has a couple of different avenues for folks to join in. We are a membership organization, so we do have like the Welcoming Network, and folks can join that for a small fee and kind of get plugged into all of these spaces. But we also have a lot of publicly facing available resources for folks. So you can just visit our website. It's welcomingamerica.org. You can email me, Molly at Welcoming America. You can, write into Dave and Eric right now, and they'll pass you along. You can check out, we have social media, Facebook and all of those kinds of spaces. I mean, really, we want to be an easy to find and inclusive space for everybody to come join. And it is a really broad network of coalitions, of municipalities, of nonprofits, small and large. One of the things that I think is wonderful about Welcoming America and the work that we do is so much of the work that happens in around immigrant integration has been focused on large cities, and we know that large cities were the traditional gateways, right? Like most of us, if we are doing our genealogy, can find that somewhere our folks from our family came through one of those gateway cities. But like more and more, growth in small and medium-sized communities in the Midwest and in the South has come from foreign-born folks. And so really thinking about the places that we don't consider always to be gateway cities, and really making a network that focuses and can uplift the stories of smaller communities as well. So.
Great. Well, Molly, this has been a wonderful discussion. We really appreciate it. And unfortunately, we're out of time, but I just wanted to thank you so much for being with us, for sharing information about Welcoming America, about Welcoming Week as well. And again, just going to highlight that if you want to contact Welcoming America, you can do so at welcomingamerica.org. And also, I think we're going to see you at the Torbram, Wisconsin Inclusivity Conference, correct? Aren't you on a panel?
Yep, I sure am. I'm really looking forward to that as well.
We're just seeing you in November.
We're moving all around.
Yeah, right. And apologies to our good friend, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We will definitely have you on next week, The Rock, and we're really happy, though, that you and your family are recovering from COVID. And Dave, it's hard to believe that another episode of Two Bald Guys has come and gone. It's sort of like the hair on your head.
Eric, I'm going to share a little inside baseball with our two viewers today. But Eric actually drafts the scripts for our shows, and then I tweak them and modify them a little bit along the way. But I noticed this week, Eric, when you drafted the script, you wrote in Luke to make a bald joke, a bald pun, And you actually wrote me out of the script. I didn't have any opportunity in the script that you prepared to offer a ball joke. So I really had to work hard to get the lines in that I've gotten in already.
Yeah, I was kind of
So I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if you're sending me a subtle message
Oh,
or
it's
what,
not.
but
No,
but
it's not.
I want to. What's that?
It's not subtle. It's how direct you want me to be.
Well, I just want not to be outdone. I just want to end with one question for you. And I know over the years you've played a lot of volleyball. You've been a real avid volleyball player. But is it
I
is
don't know
it
how to
true?
Okay.
Is it true? Is it true that you had to give up your playing volleyball because the members of your team were accidentally trying to hit your head over the net? Is that true?
Oh my gosh, is that how low it's come? Yeah, well, everyone knows with my superior height and strength that I am an avid volleyball player in my mind, at least. So I just won't comment on that because I don't want to make anyone look bad. But thanks for writing yourself back into the script, Dave, despite my
I think that's the best line of our season so far. I mean, I'm really excited about that one. I had to work hard on that one. Hey, but I want to tell our viewers to be sure to tune in next week on Friday at noon. We're delighted to have two very special guests representing an organization that cuts across partisan lines called Vote Safe Wisconsin, who will be talking about the bipartisan effort to ensure people are getting out to vote and voting safely in the upcoming elections. And we're really pleased to be having with us a former 6th District Wisconsin Congressman Tom Petri and Sarah Godlewski, who is the treasurer for the state of Wisconsin. So I think it's going to be a really great show. And Molly, again, great seeing you. Thank you for being here with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm a big fan of both of those folks. I'll be tuning in next week as well.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Good to see you. Bye, everybody.